Good morning. Today we'll be having a first lecture on healthy periodontium. Textbooks recommended for the subject of periodontology would include Clinical Periodontology by Newman and Carranza, the 13th edition. You can also follow the 10th edition for your reference. Clinical Periodontology and Implant Dentistry by Jane Linde, the 6th edition. So this comes in 2 volumes. The first volume consists of more of the basic of periodontology. The second volume consists of more of the clinical aspects of periodontology. So to start with, what is periodontology? Periodontology is a scientific study of periodontium in health and disease. So we will define what is periodontium in the later aspect of this slide. Whereas periodontics is the clinical specialty of dentistry that is concerned with the prevention, diagnosis and treatment of functional and structural diseases of the supporting tissues of teeth or their implant substitutes. So as I told you, periodontium, the supporting tissues of periodontium include gingiva, alveolar bone, cementum, and periodontal ligament. So all this together constitute your periodontium. So here you can see a healthy gingiva of a 17-year-old girl. So you can very clearly find out that the gingiva is a little coral pink color in this individual with good attached gingiva, good amount of attached gingiva, mucogingival line, the alveolar mucosa and the interdental papilla. So we will find out what are the other inner aspects of gingiva in the later slides. So from this aspect, from this lesson, we would like you to know what are the 4 normal structures of periodontium, recall at least 6 clinical characteristics of the normal gingiva, and discuss the relation between microscopic and macroscopic features, describe the various age changes in periodontal structures. Periodontium, the tissues that invest and support the teeth, namely gingiva, periodontal ligament, alveolar bone and cementum. So these 4 constitutes your periodontium. So here you can see a diagrammatic view of the gingiva, wherein the area between your sulcus and your gingiva, that is this area within your sulcus area, is called as the clavicular epithelium or the sulcular epithelium, whereas the outer gingiva is known as your oral enamel epithelium. Apart from that, the area which is attaching the whole gingival structure, that is the epithelial structure, to the tooth is your junction epithelium. So epithelium is of 3 types when told about gingiva. Apart from this, you do have your periodontal ligament, wherein there is a support of the fibers are present, which helps in attachment of the tooth and the gingival structures. And then you have your cementum, and then you have your alveolar bone. So in total, the gingiva, periodontal ligament, alveolar bone and cementum constitutes your periodontium. So again, to tell about this in radiographically, so here you have your picture wherein you do have your bone, alveolar bone here, which can be seen with the help of your radiographs, and a thin lining of periodontal ligament space surrounding the tooth, which is a radiolucent line, which you can see a black radiolucent line. Up a little away from this, you can see one more white line which depicts your radiographic lamina dura, or otherwise your alveolar bone starting, so or your cribriform plate. So this is a normal picture of your periodontium, and your bone generally starts at around 1 to 2 mm from the CEJ. So you can see the tooth which is there in situ with all its structures present. So again, to start with, you can also tell about your periodontium, wherein you have your alveolar bone followed by your periodontal ligament. Cementum is that attached with the tooth surface, and then the gingiva, which is there on the outer circle. So all this together is a periodontium, and periodontology is a scientific study of periodontium both in health and disease. So to start with the first structure, that is your gingiva. The gingiva is a part of the oral mucosa that covers the alveolar process of the jaws and surrounds the necks of the teeth in this fashion. So you can very well see how your gingiva is placed. So this is a little coral pink in color, and a little scalloped area around each of the tooth surface which surrounds the necks of the teeth. So there are three main parts in your gingiva. The first part being your free gingiva, the second part being your attached gingiva, and the third part being your interdental gingiva. So free gingiva constitutes of the area just above your teeth. So this area lodges your sulcus, and this is called as the free gingival area. It is not attached to the tooth or the bone within, so it is called as free gingiva. The second part constitutes your attached gingiva, that is the area beneath your free gingiva to the alveolar mucosa. This belongs to, called as attached gingiva because it is being attached to your underlying bone. The third one is your interdental papilla, that is areas between the teeth. This small triangular area is called as your interdental gingiva. So what is free gingiva? So we will speak about this. Free gingiva is the area from the gingival margin to the free gingival groove at the level of the CEJ. So this area is called as the free gingival margin. This can be separated by means of a probe, and this depth of the gingival sulcus is termed to be 0 to 3 mm. The ideal depth is 0 mm. The clinical depth is 2 to 3 mm. And you do have a histological depth ranging from 0 to at least 1.8 mm. So here you can see that the free or the marginal gingiva is the distance between your gingival margin on the top till the free marginal groove. So coming on to the next part, that is your attached gingiva. The attached gingiva is a part continuous with that of your free gingiva. It is firm, resilient, and it is tightly bound to the underlying periosteum of the alveolar bone. This extends from the free gingival groove to the mucogingival junction. In other words, we can tell that the free gingiva and the attached gingiva are separated by the marginal groove, and the attached gingiva and the alveolar mucosa are separated by the mucogingival junction. So coming on to attached gingiva. So as I told you, the area between your attached gingiva and your alveolar mucosa is separated by this mucogingival line, so which you can see very well on the tooth surface. This is generally on the labial or the labial aspects of the teeth, but on the palatal aspects, that is on the upper teeth, the whole palate or the whole mucosa is keratinized, and there is as such no mucogingival junction as seen in the labial sides. Now coming on to the width of attached gingiva, this is an important clinical parameter. So this is the distance between the mucogingival junction and the projection on the external surface of the bottom of the gingival sulcus on a periodontal pocket. So it has been found that on the incisor surface, according to studies, it has been found to be 3.5 to 4.5 mm in maxilla and 3.3 to 3.9 mm in the mandible. And the least width of is found in the first premolar region. In the maxilla, it has been found to be 1.9 mm, and in the mandible, it is found to be 1.8 mm. Now, coming on to what is keratinized versus attached gingiva. So, this is always a confusion telling keratinized gingiva is same as the attached gingiva, but that is not so. So, this is the attached gingiva, that is the area from the free gingival groove to the area from the free gingival groove to the mucogingival junction is the attached gingiva. On the other hand, the keratinized gingiva includes this whole area, that is whichever part is keratinized from the uppermost point on the free gingiva to the mucogingival junction. So this entire area is said to be a keratinized gingiva, whereas attached gingiva is the only part which is attached to the tooth, to the bone or the underlying tooth surface. So as I can told you, this is your keratinized gingiva. Now coming on to the interdental gingiva. So this can be either our interdental gingiva, or we also call it as interdental papilla. So this could be either a pyramidal shape or a caul shaped effect. Pyramidal shape is usually seen in your anteriors. This is because there is a tight contact between your teeth. So this is pyramidal shape, as you could see. This is mostly seen in the anteriors, whereas in the posteriors you do have two pyramids like this, which is attached by means of a sulcus like this. So it is a kind of a tent shaped or otherwise known as a caul shaped effect, in case of your posterior teeth. So this is present between your buccal and lingual papillae. So it's been found that caul is more susceptible to more disease prone area, because this small area tries to lodge food substances here, and therefore the activity of disease is more in the interdental aspects compared to the facial or the lingual aspects. And therefore when you're going to check for any disease aspect, try to check more on the interdental sides of the teeth. So then coming on to the clinical features of normal or the healthy gingiva. So this, I think I have already taken you a short class or we had a short Google Meet discussion on the clinical features of normal or healthy gingiva. And I'll be giving you the notes too. So to tell in very short aspects about what are the clinical features. So generally your gingiva is little coral pink in color because you might have physiological or racial pigmentation. The contour is little scalloped with knife edged margin. So this is called as your scalloping effect, that is a kind of U-shaped effect, inverted U-shaped effect on the teeth with a knife edged margin. Surface texture is stipple, which means that there is a little orange peel appearance on the tooth surface. The consistency is firm and resilient, and the position of the normal gingiva is at the CEJ or little above the CEJ. There is no bleeding on probing present, and the size is normal without any gingival enlargement. So now we're coming on the general aspects of gingival epithelial biology. So first was thought to provide that the gingival epithelium was thought to provide only a physical barrier to infection and the underlying gingival attachment. But now it has been shown that epithelial cells play an active role in the innate host defense by responding to the bacteria in signaling further host reactions and in integrating innate and acquired immune responses. For example, this is by increased proliferation, alteration of cell signaling events, changes in differentiation and cell death, and ultimately alteration of the tissue homeostasis. So what are the functions of gingival epithelium? So there has been number of functions. So starting with your mechanical, chemical functions, it does provide water as well as microbial barrier. There are signaling functions which are present along with this. Architectural integrity is brought about by the cell attachments, basal lamina and the keratin cytoskeleton. There are many cells which are present, such as your keratinocyte, Langerhans cells, Merkel cells and the melanocytes. Gingival epithelium always helps in constant renewal, that is replacement of the damaged cells. So there are also cell-to-cell attachments with desmosomes adherence, tight junctions and gap junctions. The basal lamina of the epithelium consists of connecting structures called as the hemidesmosomes. So here you can see the three types of gingival epithelium. So as I told you, the area which is within the tooth structure. So the entire epithelium is connected to the tooth by means of the junctional epithelium, that is your C, and the area which is covering the sulcus area is known as your gingival or the sulcular epithelium. So here you can see the outermost layer having the cells, and the outermost area is your keratinized area having a layer of keratin here. So this is your outer enamel epithelium or outer oral epithelium in the gingiva. Now coming on to sulcular epithelium, so you can see very well in this histopathological slide, wherein the area bounded by your sulcus is called as your sulcular epithelium. The area where the gingiva touch the tooth surface is your junctional epithelium, and the outer area is known as your outer enamel epithelium. So this is sulcular epithelium is a thin non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium without any retapex, and this extends from the coronal limit of the junctional epithelium to the crust of the alveolar gingival margin. It may act as a semi-permeable membrane which through which injurious bacterial products pass into the gingiva and through which the tissue fluid from the gingiva seeps into the sulcus. So this forms, since it is a semi-permeable membrane, we have to be very careful that it is an easy entry for the microorganisms into the gingiva. Now coming on to the junctional epithelium. Junctional epithelium is a stratified squamous non-keratinizing epithelium which is 3 to 4 layers thick in life, but with age it goes to 10 to 20 layers thick. The length of the junctional epithelium is around 0.25 to 1.35 mm. Neutrophils are routinely found in junctional epithelium because they are the first line of defenses, and they are found in this area. This is more permeable than sulcular epithelium. So you can understand that if there is going to be some minimal amount of food deposits also at the cervical level, there is a easy permeability of the food or the microorganisms through the junctional epithelium or sulcular epithelium to the underlying surfaces. So attachment of junctional epithelium to the tooth is reinforced by the gingival fibers. So for this reason, both the junctional epithelium and the gingival fibers are together considered to be a functional unit known as a dentogingival unit. Their functions mainly include giving an epithelial barrier against the plaque bacteria. It allows the ease of access of gingival fluid, inflammatory cells, and components of immunologic host defense to the gingival margin. Junctional epithelium exhibit rapid turnover, which contributes to host parasite equilibrium and rapid repair of the damaged tissue. So here you can see the dentogingival or the gingival fibers which are present. So these fibers are the main ones which constitutes your gingiva or how it is attached to the tooth surface. So here you can see that from this diagram there are gingival fibers or the gingivo-dental fibers are arranged in 3 patterns. So this 1, 2 and 3 are the 3 patterns which are arranged. So fibers arise from the cementum to the crust of the alveolar gingiva, or it could go from the cementum to the outer surface, or it also could go from the cementum to the external surface of your periosteum or the labial plate. And apart from this, you do have small circular fibers like this, and apart from this you also have your transeptal fibers where it attaches from the cementum of one tooth to the cementum of the other tooth. So these transeptal fibers are fibers of both the gingiva as well as your periodontal ligament. So to reiterate again, there are going to be 3 main fibers which are present. One is your gingivo-dental fibers, which are of 3 directions, which you could see here. Second is your circular fibers, and third is your transeptal fibers. So what are the functions of gingival fibers? It is to brace the marginal gingiva firmly against the tooth and to provide the rigidity necessary to withstand the forces of mastication without being deflected away from the tooth surface. It is to unite the free marginal gingiva with the cementum of the root and the adjacent attached gingiva. So there are a number of cells which are present in the gingiva. Fibroblasts, main cell for the production and the destruction of collagen. Macrophages, mast cells, osteoblasts, ventoblasts, osteoclasts, odontoclasts, polymorphonuclear leukocytes, lymphocytes, plasma cells, and undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cells. So coming on to the blood supply of periodontal tissues. So generally it starts from the apical aspect of the periodontal tissues. The arterial branches cross through the periodontal ligament through the alveolar bone and along the through the alveolar bone, and third one is through the surface of the periodontium. So to reiterate again, one is through the arterial branches which goes through the periodontal ligament, and then the second one is through the alveolar bone. The third one is along the surface of the periodontium. The terminal branches of each of these 3 arterial sources form numerous anastomosis and capillary loops like this. Okay, next coming on to the structures of the periodontal ligament. So the major periodontal ligament fibers and the gingival fiber groups. So here you can see that in case of periodontal ligament, you do have 5 different types of periodontal ligament fibers. starting with your alveolar crustal group, and then your horizontal group of fibers, your oblique group of fibers, and then your apical group of fibers, and then your interdental group of fibers. Apart from this, you also have your transeptal fibers, which forms a part of your periodontal ligament fibers. So to reiterate more on the second structure of your teeth, that is your periodontium, that is your periodontal ligament. So this structure surrounds and attaches the roots of the teeth to the alveolar bone. The average width of the periodontal ligament is 0.18 mm, with the widest in the coronal aspect, narrower in the apex, and narrowest in the middle. It has an hourglass type of pattern or shape. It consists of bundles of collagen fibers arranged in a network referred to as the principal fibers. The functions of the periodontal ligament are categorized as physical, formative and remodeling, and nutritional and sensory functions. So to start with, the physical functions of periodontal ligament entail the following. So this provides a provision of soft tissue casing to protect the vessels and nerves from the injury by mechanical forces, transmission of occlusal forces to the bone, attachment of teeth to the bone, maintenance of gingival tissue in their proper relationship to the teeth, resistance to the impact of occlusal forces, otherwise known as the shock absorption. So the second function, formative and remodeling function. Cells of the periodontal ligament participate in formation and resorption of cementum and bone. The periodontal ligament is constantly undergoing remodeling. Old cells and fibers are broken down and replaced by the new ones, and mitotic activity can be observed in the fibroblasts as well as the endothelial cells. Fibroblasts form the collagen fibers and may also develop into osteoblasts and cementoblasts. Coming on to the third and last function, there is your nutritional and sensory function. This supplies nutrients to the cementum, bone and gingiva, that is your periodontal ligament, by way of the blood vessels, and provides lymphatic drainage. It also is supplied with the sensory nerve, capable of transmitting tactile pressure and pain sensations by the trigeminal pathways. Nerve bundles pass into the periodontal ligament from the periapical area and through the channels from the alveolar bone that follow the course of the blood vessels. So these are the four important functions, so which includes your physical function. So we have already explained that. Second is your formative and remodeling function, which I have explained. The third and fourth function is your nutritional and sensory functions. So the fibers of periodontal ligament and the functions of periodontal ligament are very important. So please pay little attention to them. So coming on to the fibers again, so as I told you, it consists of 5 major types of fibers, starting with your alveolar crust, horizontal fibers, oblique fibers, apical fibers and the interradicular fibers. They are mainly composed of the type 1 collagen. It also contains secondary fibers such as oxytocin fibers and the rest of malleus. So here you can see again the location of the principal fibers of periodontal ligament. So as I told you, the alveolar crustal fibers, the horizontal fibers, the name arises because it is arranged horizontally, as well as the oblique fibers, the name arises because they are placed obliquely, and periapical fibers, the name is arranged because it is present in the most apical region, and interradicular fibers, as the name, it is present between two teeth, especially in the molars. Then the third structure is your cementum. So this is a calcified tissue that covers the roots of the tooth and provides a means of attachment for the periodontal ligament fibers to the tooth. It consists of calcified collagen fibers and interfibrillar ground substance made up of 45 to 50% of inorganic material and 50 to 55% of organic material and water. Cementum is the calcified mesenchymal tissue that forms the outer covering of the anatomic root. Two types of cementum, acellular and cellular, both consist of calcified interfibrillar matrix and collagen fibers. On the basis of these findings, Schroeder has classified cementum as acellular afibrillar cementum, acellular extrinsic fiber cementum, cellular mesostratified cementum, cellular intrinsic fiber cementum, and your intermediate cementum. So this is one more important aspect which tells about the sensitivity in the patient. So cementum and enamel, they try to meet at a junction, but in certain times this junction is not established very much, or it is not touching, and therefore the underlying dentin can become exposed. Like for example, here is a condition where your cementum, this is your cementum and this is your enamel. There is a space, they don't touch each other because according to the tooth development in this patient, and therefore there is an exposed dentin which is present here. So in these cases you might have sensitivity present because the dentin is open like this. On the other second one, there is an end-to-end relationship of enamel and dentin. The third class is one in which the cementum is overlapping the dentin. So the most of our population will have this criteria where the cementum is overlapping the enamel. Coming on to alveolar bone, these are the parts of the maxilla and mandible which provides the housing for the roots of the teeth. So here you can see the bone which acts as a socket for the tooth to be placed. So this is having three main structures. One is the alveolar bone proper, which is seen as lamina dura in your radiographs. The second one is the trabecular bone, which is there inside. The third one is a compact bone, which is there just outside. So apart from that, you do have two normal findings but could appear as a pathological defect here, wherein you have isolated areas in which the root is denuded of the bone and the root surface is covered by only periosteum, and the overlying gingiva are termed as fenestrations. But when these denuded areas extend through the marginal bone, then it is called as a dehiscence. So you can see the fenestration and the dehiscence also. So coming on to the vascularization of the supporting structures, the blood supply to the supporting structures of the tooth is derived from the inferior and the superior alveolar arteries, the mandible and maxilla, and it reaches the periodontal ligament from three main sources. First is the apical vessels, second is the penetrating vessels from the alveolar bone, third is the anastomosing vessels from the gingiva. So this is the end of the class. So apart from this, I have also discussed with you a little about the normal features of or the clinical features of gingiva, how the photograph has to be taken. So this all was discussed to you. If you have any doubts other than this, please do come and contact me. Just go through your chapter in the book Karansa. You do have the first chapter related to your periodontium. Just go through that. If you have any doubts, please always